What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 179 of Nintendo Noise, Split Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Miss Sierra Plus Ultra.
Yay!
And Mr. Ken Hicks.
What it do?
Welcome back, friends. We got a juicy one. After so much waiting, I am so excited to be in the Switch 2 pre-release era because we have so much to talk about. I have 3 episodes worth of things to talk about today. And, I mean, they're not all positive, but they are all interesting. So at least we have that going for us, right?
Yes, a trove of topics to cover.
Okay. This is how it starts. Let's
go.
go.
The thesis statement for this one today that I ran by Sierra and Ken before we sat down to record today is, since the Nintendo Switch 2's, kind of full reveal, right? We got price, we learned about the cost of games, we've gotten delays of pre-orders over in North America, we've gotten some additional controversial bits of information about things like battery life and Joy-Con drift, and there are a lot of these little stories piling up. And the question that's been on my mind this week is, can Nintendo Switch 2 overcome these controversies, right? Are these things that are going to be a kind of a passing, wave, right? That Nintendo will be able to weather and move on from? Or are these things that could, in some way, shape, or form, harm the launch of the console, hamper its first couple years on the market? And I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to any one of these, so I tried to go as deep as I could. I've got quotes from Nintendo, we've got industry analyst commentary, we've got economists. I went deep in the Duffy on this one.
We're not speaking out of our butt here. We come with facts.
Yeah, everything here, I did my absolute best to present a very, total look at how it may or may not influence the console and its launch, because obviously Nintendo Switch has been such a major success for Nintendo, and we've seen historically that following up their big success is not always a smooth transition, and we know that that's something that they've been thinking about a lot, and it's interesting to see so many of these things come up even though we know they had that thought process in mind. So that's enough ado. So no more further ado. Let's get into it. I want to start with price, right? I think that's the thing that is, top of mind for most people. And I am making a distinction between the price and tariffs and pre-orders. We'll get into that after this section, all right? So we'll start with the baseline, right? We got the announcement, right, of $450 as a price point, $500 if you want to go for the Mario Kart bundle. And, of course, the news that Nintendo would be charging as much as $80 US for titles like Mario Kart World in the United States, and as much as 90 euros for that same game, the physical version, at least, of that same game in the European Union. Yeah, it's really, really expensive, right? 90 euros is wild. That is a wild amount of money for a single game. And, during the 2 days of Nintendo Treehouse, which we covered, you can go check out our live coverage of that if you want to go check out the watch-alongs that we did. Everybody in the chat, right? There was thousands of people spamming some variation of the phrase, drop the price, right? And that was the thing that everybody was talking about. And there have been a bunch of interviews this past week with a bunch of folks from Nintendo of America. Specifically, Nintendo of America's president, Doug Bowser, justified the price for Switch 2 and contextualized that this was not a price that was decided with tariffs in mind. This was decided because of all of the major upgrades to the system, right? He specifically highlighted the bigger, higher quality LCD screen, the stronger GPU, the improved Joy-Cons, and then new software features like game chat, right? And that is, why they feel this higher price tag is warranted, is that, he said specifically, quote, "We want to make sure that this is a device that is approachable, that consumers will see as part of their overall entertainment experiences, and will understand that it has longevity to it." And all of those factors really go into the consideration of the price.
I know that dude did not bring up game chat as a reason why the Switch is priced how it is.
I mean, that's the thing, though,
No
right?
shot.
It's
No shot.
I think that makes sense, because it's that technology took R&D to develop. It takes upkeep to run, right? And you're going to have seemingly, if people actually use it, right? Like thousands of people, having servers that need to be maintained for that stuff. I'm not saying that necessarily is worth it, but it's the reality that like the development of software features like that, they cost money. And
welcome back, Connect. Continue.
It's the iToy, okay?
What is old is new again. Oh, the Switch we have a camera with a mic and it's a mouse. Let's
$60.
go.
I know.
I do like the
Crazy.
Piranha plant camera. That I might just get that.
I do like
my
that.
desk.
I do like that. That's cute.
Give it up for this plant.
So, I think whether you agree with that explanation, that's the thought process there, right? Is that the console is more powerful, more work went into development, it warrants a higher price tag. The thing I thought was interesting about it is I saw this graphic that I have in our notes that you guys can scroll down to. This is a graphic that IGN put together where it's doing a price comparison to other Nintendo consoles at launch, adjusted for inflation. And it is among the most expensive. It's not quite the most expensive console that they've ever put out. I've seen a lot of people claiming that. But adjusted for inflation, the NES and the Super Nintendo were both a little bit more expensive. But aside from that, you're looking at about an average of $50 to $70 more than what they've historically charged.
Yeah, and it's also kind of not only is it more expensive, and let me be clear, I personally believe for the price of the console and what we're getting, the price seems appropriate. I understand if it's outside of some people's price range. I sympathize with that. I also understand that people wish it were cheaper. But looking at the actual hardware itself, $450 seems fair. Pricey, but fair. I don't think the PS5 Pro is worth $700. That's different. This at least makes sense to me. With that said, though, the issue with the $450 console is that the cost of living has only gone up over the years. Wages have remained stagnant, and now we're starting to not be able to afford the things that bring us comfort. And I think that's stinging for a lot of people. They're excited, they want it, but they literally cannot afford it. Because it's still less than an PS5 with a disc drive. It's still less than a Xbox. And I feel like over time, the Nintendo products have notoriously been cheaper than the competition. The Switch was less than the PS4 and the Xbox.
Quite a bit cheaper, right? Too.
Quite a bit cheaper. The Wii was literally half the price of the PS3 at launch. You know what I mean? And actually, now that I think about it, why was the PS3 $600 at launch? I'm not going to derail that topic, but that makes it even.
You want to talk about what that costs adjusted for inflation? It's a lot.
In hindsight, that was wild that they thought they could get away with it. And I got one at launch. I was part of the.
You had a second job. But you got it.
No, I was in high school. Shout out to my parents. We didn't have it like that, but they made sure I got my game console.
That is why I switched to Xbox 360. I asked for the PS3 and they were like, fuck no, you can get the other one if you want. It's okay.
It's a fair take.
Fair enough.
I know. When you think about it, we still have we have the future PlayStation and Xbox consoles. Those generations are ahead of us. So this is a lock at $450, and then those consoles may get more expensive than that. But Nintendo was always we're the affordable console company. You can afford our consoles. You can bet your bottom dollar you can rely on us.
Now that you say it that way, I am thinking about it. That's probably it, though, right? Because this probably will still be several $100s cheaper than the competition. Because Ken brought up the PS5 Pro, is $700, right?
Without a disc drive.
Let's
assume
that baseline is what the next gen of consoles will cost is between $700 and $800 instead of $400 to $500 is Nintendo's still in that case $300. $200 cheaper than the competition. It's interesting. It does feel like this price is almost future proofing. It's accounting for the fact that everything is gonna continue to get more expensive the next couple years.
Yes. And this is not an endorsement of that pricing, by the way. Just stating the facts and observations.
I think it's just one of those things where it's like I never want to like white knight for a corporation, right? Like, but that's the reality is that like inflation is driving up costs. So like Nintendo needs to charge more to maintain the same level of profitability. And like not to defend that, right? It's like if this is at a price point that's too much for you, then it's at a price point that's too much for you. But that's like kind of why I wanted to do this episode. It's like to dig into the context here, because I think in some of these examples, I think you can point to the idea that like Nintendo is being maybe a little greedy, right? Or that they're asking for more than is maybe reasonable because they think they can get away with it. But I think when you look at some of the context of rumors we've heard about things like GTA 6 potentially retailing for like $100, right? And it's like,
no,
this might not be them trying to lead the charge as much as being like, if we plant our flag on 70 now, and then in 3 years the price goes up to 80, we're $10 behind again, right? And yeah, again, not to justify that decision, but just to contextualize it, I suppose.
I just never thought that Nintendo would be the ones to spearhead the $80 video game price tag.
Honestly,
for like the entire like Switch life cycle up until like the very end with Tears of the Kingdom, the games were $60, and then it jumped to 70. But it was like, okay, game developments get more expensive, AAA game, etc. There are already been $70 games on like the PS5 and Xbox for a little bit. Like it made sense, but it feels like they just did that yesterday, at least in like my time warped mind. It feels like they just moved up to 70 and now they're already moving up to 80 or 90 euros.
I think
which is nuts.
There's context worth offering there, right? In that Tears of the Kingdom is the only game that they sold for 70. So it wasn't like they jumped to 70 and now they're jumping to 80. It's like Tears of the Kingdom was an outlier of that generation and was $10 more than every other AAA boxed game, which was, held the line at 60 to your point. But that's because the Nintendo Switch was contemporary to the generation where it was $60, right? And now you're seeing them jump to that 70 and then now 70 plus range with 80, which is the weird thing. Because like Donkey Kong, for example, is $70. That is priced analogously to other AAA games, right? So I guess that's the question is like, how does that $80 come into play? And I have a quote here, so we can chat about that. So when asked about the strategy of the $80 price tag, like how did you decide that was the right price point for Mario Kart World? What goes into the decision between a game being $70 or $80, right? This is what Nintendo of America's Vice President of Product and Player Experience, Bill Trinan, said during an interview with IGN. I would say it's less about the strategy of pricing Mario Kart World. It's more just whenever we look at a given game, we just look at what is the experience and what's the content and what's the value. Mario Kart World, I think especially as you see from the Nintendo Direct, not to give you any hints or anything, but I did read your article this morning, and I think you had mentioned that you didn't find a lot to discover when roaming around. So I would just say to tune into our Mario Kart Direct to see what maybe you'll be able to find out about that. But honestly, this is a game that is so big and so vast, and you will find so many little things in it to discover. And there's still some other secrets remaining. I think as people end up buying and playing the game, they're going to find this to be probably the richest Mario Kart experience they've ever had. And this seems to echo the sentiment of what they said when Tears of the Kingdom came out and was at that $70 price point, was that we're not saying that across the board we're going to increase the price to $70. We're saying that we feel that this game has so much content and provides so much value that it should be priced at $70. And the question I'll raise to the group about the $80 price point is, part of me wonders if this isn't an alternative strategy for DLC, because we know that like Nintendo's never been super in on DLC, right? Like Mario Kart 8 got 2 different rounds of DLC. Games like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have gotten post-launch content, but it's kind of few and far between, right? Like it's certainly not as prevalent as you would see in other online multiplayer focused games from other publishers, right? And something that I was thinking to myself is like, do we potentially see this $80 price point emerge as something that you see for a game like Mario Kart that maybe will have a year of post-launch content, right? Where they'll bring
Free
new,
updates.
yeah, and quote unquote free updates. You're just paying for them, right? And the idea is that rather than you buying the game, playing it, and then maybe moving on from it or selling your copy or whatever, that you'll buy it and stay in the ecosystem because you'll be getting this quote unquote free updates that you paid a tax for up front.
That's a good, interesting way of thinking about it. Because, like, most of the Nintendo DLC that I can think of, or not most, that's not true. A lot of Nintendo DLC has been free. There are noteworthy exceptions, like the Pokemon games have to pay DLC. That's
Smash.
an alternative to, Smash. But I guess, like, if they do that, then if they charge $80 and then charge for DLC, how would that make you feel?
That would bad.
I wouldn't. Sorry, but I would not put it past them.
No, me neither.
I do want to believe that it's like this is $80 because everybody loves this game and they're gonna buy it, and it's like open world Mario Kart, not true open world, but it's like open world Mario Kart, and they've never done anything like this before. And there's apparently so much that we still have yet to see and learn, and it'll all come to light in the Mario Kart Direct. But like they better show like some crazy shit in this game then, because like we are buying it at 80 and then like expecting to be given like years of value, not only replay value, but I'm also assuming like free updates. Like if they're baking it into the price, like whatever, I guess, but like I would not be surprised if there was still a paid DLC. And
Where's Diddy Kong?
yeah, I saw that. I didn't get to dive in, but I saw there's still a lot of people missing. Yeah. Because you never know. It's like okay, like you're gonna get like you're gonna get like more additional like Nintendo themed tracks, but like what if you want to buy like the Animal Crossing track pack, or like here's a pack of tracks that are like Zelda themed, and you can buy them extra. They're not part of what we have planned for the free updates, but you could buy them extra if you want.
Yeah. And that's like my whole suggestion is like 1,000% speculation, right? Like I wouldn't put it past them to do
speculation
something like that.
And very much optimistic. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
I mean, it's like less even like optimism on my part and more just like trying to work it out, because like I it's not like I think that like good guy Nintendo is trying to like. I don't know. Like I'm with you, right? Where it's like I think it's dubious, maybe, right? The idea that like, oh, it's gonna be so worth $80 that like you won't care, right? And that feels like a very bold claim for them to make with no basis in reality, I guess, is my like devil's advocate position to the like the realist position that I think you two are putting forward, which is like, they might just be doing this because they think they can. And it might be that simple, right? Like, that would make sense. But, yeah, I guess just the similarity to the statement of the Tears of the Kingdom of it all, of like, I agree that game was worth $70, right? There was an insane amount of content in that game and work put into it to elevate it from what Breath of the Wild was. So, like, fair enough if that's what you're claiming now, but I'm with you, Sierra, where it's like, you got to sell me on that, man. Yeah. Like, you really got to come correct with something that proves to me that this makes sense.
This game is worth $80. So I'm curious. This is not something I'm in any way, shape, or form an expert on, but I wonder if it has anything to do with the pricing, especially with the Switch 2 being cheaper in Japan than it is in America. I read somewhere
context for that. There are two versions of the Switch 2 in Japan. There is a region-free version, which is cheaper, that will only play Japanese games. But if you want the region-unlocked version, which is how every other Switch is just it can play games from any region, that one costs roughly the same amount.
Oh.
Thank you for that context. I did not know that. But
my brain is filled with useless information!
It's the good information. But like over like the past 5 years, the Japanese yen has dropped like 30% in value.
Yes.
And do you think like the weak value of the yen compared to the U.S. dollar by comparison has any impact on the pricing?
I think it does. Yeah. Because so here, jumping ahead a little bit, I've got a statement here from his name is Dr. Serkan Toto, and he is from Kantan Games, which is an independent game industry consultancy that's focused on the Japanese market. He had some comments about why Nintendo is confident on raising prices and some of the reasons that they're raising prices even higher than their competitors, right? So he said, against the backdrop of global inflation, it's a good opportunity for Nintendo now to set the stage for the future and raise prices across the board. They look at the industry and see Sony charging $700 for a PS5 Pro, or rumors about price hikes for blockbusters like Grand Theft Auto 6. Nintendo was also encouraged by the fact that they got away with the $70 they charged for Tears of the Kingdom in 2023. And even simpler, I think they raised software prices across all these regions because they think they can. Toto is predicting that fans will come to adjust to the prices, and he said Nintendo already priced in the protest and uproar. Nintendo already priced in the protest and uproar by part of the fan base, betting that this will allow. Betting that this will all blow over and gamers will come to accept a new normal eventually. And I think they will be correct about this. So I'm sorry I had so much trouble there. Sometimes when you're reading a quote where somebody was speaking, it's so awkward to like get their rhythm. Cadence. I apologize.
Right.
So to restate that, in case I lost you on that last bit there, what he's saying is that they have factored in the fact that this price increase will cause a uproar and that people will be upset by it, and that the margin of difference that will be made up by increasing the price will cover the number of people that wait to buy or don't buy at all, and that this is a strategy that we've seen borne out in a lot of other industries, right? This is what Netflix did with their price increase and the account sharing. We saw Sony do the same thing with PlayStation Now, the online, or no, is that the old one? PS Plus.
That was the old one. PS Plus. Yeah.
When they increased the price of that overall, they had a bunch of people drop off the lowest tier, but because of the price increase, it actually became more profitable overall. So I think that you're probably like that. I think that that's a factor, right? And the idea that like America, North America, but specifically the United States is generally Nintendo's largest market by quite a significant margin. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. I think it's pretty important that that's happening, right? That it's like right now at a time where, inflation is driving up the costs of game development, and there is a worse return on investment for their currency. It's like, yeah, I mean, they are coming off of a historically successful period, and they're having to transition over to a new console while they have their hands in all these other pies. And yeah, like I think that they are really trying to be as conservative as possible in terms of like setting themselves up for success and not like taking risks that are not calculated like this, where it's like, yes, we will upset some people by a price increase, but like overall will come out for the better and people will move on and they'll get over it. And as everybody else charges more, we'll look less and less bad. Right. And
yeah,
this is something Nintendo's done in the past. I think because of our age, it's easy to remember and think of Nintendo as like the cheaper guy and all, but like that's not always been their bag, right? In the earlier days of Nintendo and in the like more, aggressive teeth cutting portion of them like creating the console market in America, right? Like they had an iron fist on publishing. They charged more than the competition. They have been the big bad cutting edge guy in the past. And I think that with where they are,
it's been like 20 years though.
Yeah, but
not longer.
Times are
Like,
changing.
when did the Super NES come out?
19.
I want to say 89.
No, I think it's 90. Let me see. Maybe you're right.
Like,
maybe it's
like,
89.
Nintendo has been the 3DS aside.
1990.
Okay, I was close. Has been the budget-friendly guy since the N64. The N64 was.
That's not true. The N64 was more expensive. Games
Was
were more expensive. Cartridges cost more than discs.
Oh,
So
I
it's
was
literally,
wrong then.
that's what I'm saying. It's, you have this
rose-tinted
perception
glasses.
because of when we've been purchasing, right? Like the Wii was cheapest, the GameCube was cheapest, right? The Switch was cheapest. But yeah, it's like that's not always held true, and that's not always played out for them, right? Because the
Going to be-
N64 was the last time that they were the most expensive, and they did not win that generation. So
Yeah, no, they got cooked.
it's an interesting question. And I think there's some other quotes we'll get into in a little bit that I think highlight some other like interesting comparisons where that's concerned. So we'll put a pin in that for right now, because the other thing I wanted to throw on the kind of docket here was the minor controversy, I would say, about Nintendo Switch 2 editions, right? Which is that there are going to be boxed Nintendo Switch 2 editions of Nintendo Switch 1 games that are essentially just the original Switch 1 game cart with a code for the upgrade. So that created some like buzz. Like some people were like a little bit upset about that, and this idea that like, why are they charging full price for new games and yada yada, and like
Nintendo never drops the price of their games unless it flops.
and that's the explanation that Bill Trinan provided, right? Was that and again, he's the vice president of product and player experience for Nintendo of America. He said, well, again, what I would say is that we just look at each individual game and we look at the content and the value of that game, and then we say, what is the right price for this value of entertainment? What I would probably counter to some of that is that really what you're looking at is for the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, that's the price, the physical price for somebody that has not bought the base game. For somebody who already has bought Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, the upgrade packs for those are $9.99. And if you happen to be a Nintendo Switch Online and expansion pack member, both of those are inclusive with that membership, so there's no additional charge for those. So I think that's like one of those things where, like, you know, I get folks who are of the opinion that upgrades should be free, but based on what we've seen of these upgrades,
It costs money to make these upgrades.
they have
So,
new
like,
content, right? So I think that
some of them have new content, some of them are just better graphics and better frame rate, and some of them are a little bit just like better load times, right? So there are some games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that are getting a free Switch 2
Right.
upgrade, but that's mainly to help with performance. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, that's more of like graphics fidelity. And then there's like a third tier that's actually getting new gameplay content.
Yeah, like
So
with
it's-
Kirby.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like that's
so-
like a whole new like 0.5 experience.
Update.
Yeah.
And also, we're not strange to this. Like, they've been doing this for a while with PlayStation, where it's like, okay, if you have the Last of Us Part 2 PS4 version, like digital, you can upgrade to the PS5 version for $10 more and get all this extra stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. They put time and money to optimize it and make it better for the console. If I want the better version, I'll drop the $10. So like the people who are complaining about this, like at the end of the day, like I do wish Nintendo games dropped in price over time, because like I think that would make this an easier pill to swallow. Like I can buy The Last of Us Part 2 for $40 and then pay $10 for the upgrade, or just get the PS5 version for $50.
Yeah, and
But-
I think that is the thing that like feels so like off about it, is the fact that like these are now like some like Breath of the Wild is a game that's going to be what? It's closer to 10 years old than 5 years old now. And it's like that is a game that you're still charging like it's effectively the exact same price as it was 10, and it like I get that. I get people feeling some kind of way about that. And I do think that Bill's comment like does make sense to me of like, well, yeah, but like, don't you own the game, right? Like you probably own this game. So like you're not paying I'm not paying $70 to upgrade those games, right? Like nobody I know is paying
get
$70
included
to
with my
upgrade those games.
subscription, which I do like. I think that does add more value to the Nintendo Online subscription.
I think my biggest thing with that is just the consistency factor of like that's been I hate that the expansion pack is like it comes with some of them. It's like why is, and then it's like it's no rhyme or reason. It's like games that like I think more people would spend money on DLC for are included, and ones that are like more niche are not included. It's just like what ends up being in it always feels so fucking random. And the fact that this is like, we have like 10 games we've announced are going to have paid updates and 2 of them are free. It's like, okay, like, all right, you know,
I feel you.
it's whack. It's like, it just,
That's a valid point.
They don't communicate clearly enough. And I think that's part of the reason people are so pissed about all this stuff is that like they didn't say that games are going to be $80 in the direct. They didn't say what the cost of these upgrades were going to be. I had to find it in an interview. Like that, I think that shit rubs people the wrong way because it very much feels like they're trying to pull a fast one. And
No,
I think
absolutely.
right?
I feel like it, and I've never been more aware of this than ever. But like as a result of like watching a lot of Kit and Krista lately, who, for folks listening that don't know, they are former Nintendo employees. They used to be the Nintendo Minute personalities, and they wore many hats in the organization. Now they're out though, and they are just spilling tea for free on their podcast about
what?
yes, like just like dissecting everything Nintendo does and like how they perceive it as previous employees, like what were like when the uproar happened, like how like we think that Nintendo is handling it right now, and like what, like breaking that down. So they broke down some of the quotes from Doug and Bill, and the basic gist of it was like there's a lot of subtext that they are hiding in these quotes by using these carefully curated press responses. So like with this whole variable pricing thing, they are basically not committing to like, they're like, we're going to use variable pricing and that's going to, you know, we're going to determine the value by like the work done on the game and like the resources used. Well, what's the floor and what's the ceiling? They are not sharing. They are not sharing that. They are deliberately not sharing that with us so that they have the freedom to modify prices as they see fit. There's no way for the consumer to like, you know, come into this with any sort of understanding of where they're at, and like it's pretty evil. It's really evil.
And I think it casts them in a particularly like concerning light, right? When you think about how pricing played out on Switch, where like all boxed games were $60 and they were certainly not all created equally. Like, you know, like I paid the same amount for Kirby Star Allies as I did Breath of the Wild, and that's insane. And like if this was something where they were going to be exploring the pricing, and who's to say they might, but if we saw a universe where the like those styles of games, right, the Kirby Star Allies, even something like maybe like Princess Peach Showtime, right, like those like more like AA budget titles were all going to be like $60, right, and that they'll all stay at $60, and the like single player AAA experience that you're going to beat in like 20 hours is 70, and if it's a game that they think that you're going to spend hundreds of hours on, it's 80. Like it's not a strange marketing message in terms of like what do you get, like how do I know what any game is going to cost? But I think if that's what actually happened, we might receive the information a little bit. It might be like, okay, like I'm gonna save more money on the games that should be cheaper, so maybe I don't mind spending a little bit more on the ones that are beefier. But to your point, that's not what's going to happen, right? Like they're going to set the new line probably at 70, and then they'll just charge us extra for games that they think are worth extra. And that's like, you know, I think to me, I'm so much less willing to spend that amount of money on games like that anymore. And I skipped all of those budget AA titles that came out last year because I was like, I'm not spending $60 on Princess Peach Showtime. I'm just not. I'm not doing it. I'm not spending $60 on like what is a 7 out of 10 middle of the road equivalent of an indie title, right? For $60. I'm just not going to do it. And I think that, you know, maybe the idea is that, like, again, right, like you'll sell fewer copies for more money and that will justify, you know, the expense. But when you think about the fact that, like, there are more games that have sold over 1 million copies on Nintendo Switch than on any other console, it's like they've had so many of those.
That's actually crazy when you think about it.
They've had so many of those small games pop off and like and be more successful than the average game of that size from another publisher. And if what they're saying is true and they are genuinely going to explore pricing more aggressively and we see more games that are $10 and $20 and $30 and $40 and $50 from them, then maybe I'm willing to play ball with this idea. But I'm right there with you, Sierra, where I have zero confidence that they're going to explore the pricing in a down direction. It's only going to be in an upward direction. And I just think that it's like there's no fucking universe I'm spending $70 on Kirby Star Allies.
Fuck no, guys. I don't want to live in a world where there's $100 games. I know we're headed there. I don't want it.
You know what? I'd be cool with a $100 game if my salary increased 30%. I would, if universally we just had our salaries increase 30%, then I'll be cool with $100 games. Until then, I think we reclaim the means of production.
and that's obviously a huge problem, right? Is that like realistically, it's like as much as you can point fingers. Like you're right, Ken, right? Like if wages were not stagnant in the way that they are, this wouldn't matter, but they are. And that's something that, like, I do worry that we're going to come to a point where it's like paying for video games is going to become more and more of a luxury. And that, like, you know, you're going to see people spending more time on free to play or more times on other forms of entertainment, right? I think the thing with $100 video games that I think is interesting is, like, I think there's absolutely an argument that there are video games that have already been released that are worth $100. And I think that
provide $100 worth of value,
right?
To you.
And I think people aren't willing to have that conversation because I think like sticker shock is so real. But when you think about how many games there are that are like a game like Overwatch, where like you paid $60 for it boxed, and then you almost like if you played that game for any amount of time, like for several years or whatever, right? Like you almost certainly spent $40 to $50 more on fucking opening packs, right, to get cosmetics and shit. And like, I do think that there's an interesting argument to be made of like, why is it better for you to spend? Because it feels better, right? For you to spend $60 and then spend $1 here, $1 there, $1 here, but you lose in that equation. You spend more. And I think if we did get to a point where a game like something like Destiny, right, which has like multiple updates and has been like if that game was $100 and you played that game for 10 years or whatever, is that not worth it? You know, like, and again, I'm not advocating for $100 price tag, but I think if we were more, if the industry had been more willing to experiment with pricing models earlier on, rather than like all of the like being like, well, we got to find more value, season passes, DLC, like, you know, microtransactions. I think that we, the consumer, probably would have come out on top. Because I think, like, I look at a game like The Witcher 3, which was like, that's a $60 game, and they put out 2 entire extra campaigns that were free. That game is worth $100. It just is. And, like, it's like, kind of fucked up that, like, I don't know, like, we were so averse to the price increasing over the last 2 decades that now it's jumping by like $20. Because that's the other thing, right? It's like, I argued this when the price went up on PlayStation and Xbox to $70, the price of games had maintained that for over 2 generations. And that was unsustainable because cost of development went up.
Skyrocketed.
Right? And then that's why we have a huge explosion of DLC and season passes and microtransactions and all this shit that we all fucking hate. And that's the if you want to hear the optimistic hope, the optimistic take, that is my one hope that maybe there is a positive takeaway to come from this, is that that's what we're seeing, is like charging you up front for content that they're going to then give you over the course of the game's life cycle to maintain health of the community, right? Keep people logging in to play Mario Kart every day rather than running into like what we did with Splatoon, right? Where it's like Splatoon 3 comes out and you can play through all the content in 2 weeks and then
what?
That's it, right? And it's like, wait until there's stuff for you to pay for. And it's like, okay, well, nobody wants that, right? If this,
I'm not gonna lie, I would pay $80 for an Animal Crossing game if they gave it more than a year's worth of support.
Exactly.
Like that's a game that should have
think about that.
Content,
like,
you know
if you
what I mean?
like, and that's my question is like, would you be willing to pay $80 if you're like, we have guaranteed a 2-3 year plan for this game post launch that will be supported by that increased cost? And I
Yes.
do think that would be okay. I think I would swallow that better than paying $60 and then paying $20 more for DLC a year later or whatever when they're done with it and I'm not playing the game anymore, you know? Versus like regular updates every month for 3 years or something like that. So the last quote I want to pull in before we move on to the orange elephant in the room is there's a quote here from Matthew Ball's State of Video Games in 2025, which was a big industry-wide report that came out earlier this year. And a quote here is, some game makers hope GTA 6 will be priced at $80 to $100, breaking the $70 barrier, and helping $50 titles move up to $60, $60 to $70, $70 to $80, etc. And I think that is the scary part of this, is that this is potentially just a sign of things to come, and that like Nintendo is taking it on the chin now because they're the first to do it, but that they certainly won't be the last.
Yo, whoever is optimistic about games going up to $100 is an evil, evil person.
People who sell them.
Well, and I think that is like the underbelly of like why everyone is so pissed. Is like we are headed for an economic downturn, and like you said earlier, Ken, wages are stagnant. Like all of this feels tone deaf in the face of that. Sure, maybe they're proving themselves by like pricing the games higher, so like anyone who's like I'm not paying will just not pay and they're covered. But I wonder if they're severely estimating how many people that is.
And that's I think my big question is like, could we end up in a 3DS situation, a death by 1,000 cut situation, you know?
Yes.
Or even the PlayStation 3, right? Which was like came out at this way too high price point. They had to pivot. It took the entire generation, a concerted effort to close that gap. And eventually it played out and it worked for them. But yeah, it was an entire generation of work to make up for a stumble out of the gate. And, you know, we've seen that happen before, right? Go ahead. Final thoughts on this.
And like at the end of the day, I don't think that the Switch 2 is even unreasonably priced. Like $450 makes sense to me.
It's the software bit of it.
Yes, it's the software that leaves a dirty taste in my mouth, and the timing of everything going on too.
Yeah,
like, this is a terrible timing to announce all these price hikes.
Agreed. And it makes you wonder if they would have just been better off putting it out last year and allowing there to be shortages. You know.
When we were meeting every week on this show to be like, oh, I think Switch 2's no news.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, maybe this week? No news. No.
Someday they'll tell me something. So let's talk about tariffs. So many fans, commentators, journalists, myself included on this camp, right, wondered if the price that we were told was at all influenced by the looming threat of U.S. tariffs, right? If you live in the United States, you're acutely aware of what's going on. I think for most of us in the audience, even if you're in the European Union or in the UK, where a lot of our other listeners are, you're probably pretty dialed in on what's been going on, right?
And if not, you need to wake up, like real talk.
So I think that was something that a lot of people were kind of like smoking a bit of copium on, right? It's like, hey, maybe there won't be, maybe it was already accounted for. Maybe they were protecting themselves, like, and this is the worst it'll get, right? Well, Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser was speaking with The Verge, and he said he confirmed that tariffs were not part of the decision to set that $450 price point, to set that $80 price point for games. And he said this: put the April 2nd tariff announcement aside, any previous tariffs were not factored into the price itself. To diversify the places where we're manufacturing our hardware and our accessories, which specifically is they have mostly been manufacturing them in China, and they've now have shifted to other development centers in Vietnam and Cambodia. So that is a way that they've kind of been able to dodge the quote unquote early stages of tariffs, right? And we know that there have already been a certain number of Nintendo Switch 2s that have been brought into countries like the United States. Like they are in places. It's now the question of like, how this plays out over the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years. That's what they're now trying to kind of like pause and understand, right? So he said that, you know, the latest round of tariffs from the Trump administration, which includes a 46% tax on Vietnam and a 49% on Cambodia, are more problematic. So even if they're able to circumnavigate the Chinese situation, which is like way worse, because that's like we're in a retaliatory tariff situation. There's 100%. It's actually 150% now.
It's over 100%, which is wild.
Truly wild. So even circumnavigating that, you're looking at upwards of 50% increase, which is still quite a bit of money. So in another interview where he was speaking with Wired, he said it's created a challenge and it's something that we're going to have to address, right? And it's something that I think that I saw some other analysts talk about how the kind of like general understanding was that these tariffs were not going to be in place until a bit later in the year. And I think Nintendo maybe thought that they would be able to, the launch date would kind of happen before that, and they would be able to at least get the initial wave out on the market before they were totally impacted by this. And that's obviously that's not how it played out. So Bowser said that they're quote unquote actively assessing the situation, right? And that, you know, we just don't know what's going to happen yet. And of course, you know, this is coming a few days after the news that they were going to be indefinitely delaying pre-orders for the United States, right? Like pre-orders were supposed to go live tomorrow, and they're not. They said that the June 5th release date is unchanged, but I mean, that could obviously still change. And earlier today, it was revealed that Canada is also being affected by this. And they specifically said pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in Canada will not start on April 9th in order to align with the timing of pre-orders to be determined in the United States. Nintendo will provide updated information at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is unchanged. So we may still see it on the 5th, but I mean, like, we got less than a month. Like, how much time does that really give them to assess the situation? And I mean, who knows? Like, negotiations have begun. We might see the U.S. back down on some of these tariffs. We might see, you know, negotiations take place that change the percentages a little bit. But there are a lot of questions up in the air for something that is supposed to be on store shelves in less than 30 days.
Well, no, does it come out in June?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. They got 60 days.
2 months.
They got 60 days.
Which isn't a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, because they get charged a tariff when they ship it into the United States. So they're probably building all of these Switch 2s, and they don't want to jump the gun and pay the tariffs.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would imagine they probably are. They've probably stopped shipping them. That's probably why they delayed pre-orders, is that there aren't enough of them in North America now.
Yeah, I saw a rumor, and I don't know if it's true, but apparently Apple just like privately flew a bunch of iPhones and a bunch of planes over to America.
That's so funny.
That's some like Looney Tune shit.
Oh, I mean, it was so funny because like low key in our Discord, I think it was Andy, Steve's dad, who was like, would it just be cheaper for you guys to just get them in the UK or something now? And I was like, maybe I'll go visit the UK and buy a Switch.
Yo, I will literally give you money to buy me one.
That's the move, right? I get everybody I know who wants a Switch. Give me your money. I'll pay to get over there. And, you know, we got to work it out. You guys all give me like $25 extra to cover the cost of the ticket. And then I come back with a bunch of Switches.
Yeah.
Yo, like, wait. Are we discussing tax evasion technically?
No, but I think it is illegal importation. So it's definitely
Just
something
kidding,
that
Star.
I'm just kidding. Parody.
Any kids listening, we are just kidding. It's just a haha joke.
Just kidding, Daddy Nintendo. I would never. Okay.
Well, Nintendo doesn't care. It's not about him. Like, Nintendo didn't ask for this. This is not Nintendo's fault.
So,
oh, man.
Basically the situation at hand here, right, is now I think the major question is what happens if tariffs do influence the price, right? And there are some estimates that are not great, but I think they are not nearly as bad as they could be. So there's another analyst firm I'm pulling in from today, DFC Intelligence, who has released their first Switch 2 report, like post the announcement of pricing and everything, right? So they did this whole report where they were talking about how they had expected the Nintendo Switch 2 to cost $500. They thought that the $450 price point was really good and that Nintendo was going to have a really successful launch. They made the prediction that they believed it would be the fastest selling console ever. And they said that they believed it would sell somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 million units, which would put it at, I think, roughly about 2 million units more than the original Switch sold in its first year. So they were pretty bullish about it. They felt like this was a great aggressive price point, and that that there was going to be a really, really high demand for the product. And now they've adjusted things, and they are saying that they believe that the launch will be hampered by tariffs, but that overall they're still pretty positive on it. They still believe that it's going to be the fastest selling console ever, and they've reduced their estimates down to 15 million, which would just put it on par with the best selling console of all time. So not too bad.
I don't believe that for a second. If the tariffs end up being as bad as we think they were going to be, like,
well,
they just introduced these tariffs. What was it, Saturday? Like, it's been 6 days to second.
Believe that's correct. Yeah,
kind of went into effect. So if you go to the store right this second, what's currently stocked on the supermarket is what was already there, right? In about 5 weeks, when they need to replenish the food and the accessories or whatever it is that you buy, toilet paper, that stuff that is being imported from that point going forward that we're going to buy in 5 weeks is when we're going to see our cost of living go up. So unless like these tariffs like come to like a sharp and immediate end, I find it hard to believe that a $540 console in time of economic downturn where wages are stagnant will be the best, or tied with the fastest selling system of all time. This just like there's bullish and then there's ignorance. I think if it wasn't for all this at the $450 price point, I'd give them some slack. But I know better than these analysts. I'm a smart cookie.
You're on the
Bold claim.
ground.
Bold claim. So yeah, their belief is that it could see a 20% price increase, which would put it at $540, and that could be over the next 2 years, right? If tariffs are maintained. So I think. I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying, man, but I think it's one of those interesting questions of like everything costs more than it did when the Switch came out, right? So yeah, like this is quite a bit more money than that was, but if everything is going to see the same increase and video games maintain the same rough level of value versus cost in terms of like return on investment for time spent, I don't know, man. That is one of the things, right? Like even during the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 era, right? During the housing crisis and that recession, video games usually stay pretty healthy during that time because even when they are expensive, if you can spend, 80
hours.
Right, or even less, even 20 hours, right? In a game, it's a better than a return on investment than going to a movie or, paying to go out to eat or any of the other things that people do for fun, right? Go to a live event. I hear what you're saying. I think that it's to me, this does seem bullish. That seems high, but
it seems like bullshit.
The kind of period on the sentence from them is that they think that when Nintendo releases their earnings report in May, that's when it's going to really become clear what's going to happen here and how much they're willing to maybe, because again, right, if we're looking at a 20% increase, right, like that's still them taking some of that loss. It's not passing 100% of that cost onto the consumer. It's them meeting somewhere in the middle of us paying a little bit of that extra cost, them probably sacrificing a little bit of profitability on the unit. And that's an interesting question, because when it comes to the Switch proper, right? Like, that's one of the few examples of a console where every unit sold, they made a profit, right? Usually the business model is you sell the console at a loss and then you make your money by selling software, right? And Nintendo Switch was, they made, I think they made like a $50 profit on every unit that they sold. And that only maintained, that became a better value proposition over time because the cost of producing Switches went down over time. So if this console was already being sold at a loss at all, say it like costs $500 and that $450 price point is them being like, okay, we'll sell it for $50 less than it costs and you'll buy one game and we'll make a profit on that first sale. That's a standard model. So like that becomes a pretty interesting question when you're talking about them negotiating profitability for upwards of 2 years. Is like that's significant. That could be a really significant cut into their profit margin. But I guess there is the thing that like you don't really make the money on the hardware, right? Like, and if you can sell it even at a slight loss, right, to just get it moving, then because they can't afford to just not sell the amount that they are used to selling in America. They need to, right? Where their
and
largest
they can't just
market.
delay it because like these games are done. They need to make money, so these developers can go on to other things.
Yeah, and I mean, like they need products to put out, right? Like they're a business; they need revenue. They've been waiting for this, and it's something they've been building towards for years, right? Like, and I think they are sitting on a lot of money. They have several $billion in cash reserves. Like they can take it on the chin a little bit, but yeah, it does raise some serious questions about like how much this generation might be. Like might have its might be like kneecapped right at the starting line.
Chat, are we cooked?
Drop the price, right?
but I guess the other thing is they're going to wait to the very last minute. Well, like maybe a couple of weeks before the Switch 2 comes out to make an announcement on the pricing. Because once they announce that the price is $540 or whatever it is to say it's higher, it's going to be real hard for them to back that up. Once they commit to shipping these things and paying those tariffs. Because like even if like they ship them out and then a month later the tariffs come to an abrupt end, let's just say hypothetically speaking, they already paid the money for the Switches that are already in America.
I think
so they have to maintain that price point.
I don't agree. I think they dropped the price back down. I do, and I think they would just take that on the chin because I think that's a one-time loss to improve the selling, like the overall ability to sell the device. And I think even if that's several $1 million, right, they have several $1 billion in cash. They can take a hit of a couple million to secure the future of the generation.
That's fair.
But again, to your point, like that's a huge L that they have to take for no reason, and that sucks.
Yeah. Okay. So they announced the Switch 2. They say it's $540. Because of the tariffs. Will you personally still buy one right away, or would you wait? And this is a question for both of y'all.
Wait.
I would wait.
I have no choice. If it's $450, if I manage to get the Switch with the Mario Kart World pack-in, so that's $500. I would do that because not because like that's a great like thing for me to spend. Like I don't need to be spending $500 on anything right now, but Mario Kart World is not going to come down, so that's my way of getting it for cheaper. Done, got the game. But if I can't get that and or the price goes up, I literally can't.
It's like not worth it.
So I think if you can get the bundle at $540, that's actually like it comes out in the wash then, right? Because if you're buying the $500 version, you're saving $30 on the game, right? That's like the great thing about that bundle is like it's a good deal. So, well, I mean it is, right? Like it's like even if that game costs $70, you'd be saving $20. It's a good deal.
Okay. Fair.
So with that in mind, if it's $540 with the tariffs, you're actually only spending $10 difference than you would have if you had just bought the game at launch. So
that is some wild math and logic, and I would assume the 540, if they're doing like a 50% tariff and they're going to take a loss, I'm assuming the 540 would be like the 450 non-bundle version, and the bundle version would probably be like closer to $600 if I were to guess based off those numbers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think at 540, if it's the packed-in version, I don't think that's too tough to swallow. I think $40 more than what you expected to spend is not awful.
Damn, Sierra, Pete just called us broke.
Well,
nah, I'm just willing to balance credit card debt more than you two, I guess. I don't know.
No,
Bro, you put this shit on a
have-
0-interest card. You don't pay for shit. It's all right.
I don't have like absurd debt right now, but one false move and it will skyrocket. So
Spirals quickly.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's the thing. I'm not saying it's negligible. I'm saying that I think $40 is a lot less than I expected, right?
Assuming that 540 price point is for the version with Mario Kart.
Yeah, I'm operating under that assumption. To your point, it might not be, right? If that's the 450, then that's closer to $600, and that's a lot of money. And I don't see myself doing that. I think the thing that's tough for me in the conversation of like, will you buy it at this price point, yes or no, is like, if we are looking at a universe where this is like 2 years, right? It's like, I don't see myself waiting 2 years into the generation to get one.
There.
So.
Eventually, the Nintendo will drag you over. I do want to play Pokemon ZA on a Switch too, and like maybe my attitude will change maybe my attitude will change in like October, and I just end up sucking it up. But like, I feel like if the tariff's going for that long, we're going to be having bigger issues. Because let's be real, and it's going to be very clear here. Video games are the least of our problems with everything coming up, like food, it's necessities. Like none of that is lost on us. We're just talking about video games here because this is the podcast. But like, don't get it twisted. We are very aware of everything awful about these tariffs, and we're not unsympathetic. There are bigger fish to fry. But like,
that's the thing though, right? Is like, even during lean times, people need entertainment. And I think that like, not to advocate for these increases or anything, but I do think that at the end of the day, video games provide a better return on investment than any other thing that I spend money on.
That
for
is
entertainment.
true. Yeah.
By a lot.
In terms of time value. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably like, I can't go 2 years without it.
Mm-mm.
I could probably go till like, maybe like you said, October when ZA comes out.
And I mean, that's
maybe a little after. I don't know.
I think all of us also have the context of like, we make content about Nintendo, so it's like, I kind of like, if I don't get it, then this podcast ends, right? It's like, we can't do a show about the Nintendo Switch 2 and no one has one. And
I gotta get my money up.
You're a Nintendo variety streamer, right? Like, what are you gonna stream if you don't have a Switch 2?
Pete, I know you think I'm not thinking about June 6th or whatever. I am.
These are the questions, right? And it's like, again, I'm not like sitting here being like, yeah, I have fuck you money, I can just spend it on whatever I want.
No, I know.
But it's like, at a certain point,
you kind of have to.
Yeah, it's at a certain point. It's like, well, this is my hobby. Like, this is what I do for fun, and it's like, it sucks, plain and simple. It's a shitty fucking situation, and I wish it were different. I hope it resolves itself in these next couple weeks. It might, but it also very much might not. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, there's nothing I hope for more than for this to be one of those Nintendo Noise episodes that I put fucking several hours of work into, and then the next day it's all invalid because something new happens, and it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Okay, great. It's not a funny time capsule episode. I hope that's the case by tomorrow. Realistically, there's a very, very decent chance that this ends in the next several weeks, or that we deal with it for 2 years or 3 years. And
oh my goodness.
I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. But I think if I'm living in a world where I can't afford to go out to eat, I can't afford to go to the movies, I can't afford to, all my streaming, like, it's like, video games are going to look pretty good during that time. So
my backlog's going to look pretty good.
yeah, man. I mean,
yeah.
that's for fucking real. And that is going to be I think we've already seen that in the last several years, right? That like people spend more time on older games than new games. And yeah, I mean that trend might worsen during this era just because of these tariffs, because like it could be a thing where all video games are going to go up in price, you know?
Yeah. And that is why, dear listeners, I'm very stoked to announce that I'm launching a Thief Finder. Please stay tuned for exclusive content.
Yo.
Oh my god, yeah, it's time to launch the Flip Screen Games OnlyFans. What's going on?
Exactly.
Gotta pay for this console somehow, folks.
You are expanding into new and unique revenue streams.
Yo, everybody needs a side hustle.
I need a side hustle for my side hustle.
Yeah.
Oh man. So the last two items here on the docket are shorter ones, and I think are more minor controversies, but this is the week of controversies, so let's talk about them. Joy-Con Drift 2 Electric Boogaloo. This one I think feels more like salt in the wound than like a really major problem, because we just don't really know enough about the situation yet, right? The word on the street was that the Joy-Con 2 was going to have Hall effect sticks, which if you know anything about Joy-Con Drift, Hall effect sticks are a different style of stick that is far, far less susceptible to drift. And if you ever bought a like Joy-Con repair kit, you probably replaced your original stick with a Hall effect stick. So there was a rumor that we were going to have Hall effect sticks on the Joy-Con 2. And after kind of several days of like not really answering the question on whether or not they had them or not, we got confirmation from Nate Bildorf, who's the Senior Vice President of Product Development and Publishing at Nintendo of America, and he was interviewed by Nintendo Life, and he told them that the Joy-Con 2's controllers have been designed from the ground up. They're not Hall effect sticks, but they feel really good. They do allegedly feel very good. I've heard that. The question is whether or not they will, in 6 months, start drifting. That's the question. The fact that they had to deal with a class action lawsuit over drift leads me to believe that there's a non-zero chance that it will be addressed anyway. But
did they lose that?
They did.
Oh.
So I have a feeling that they probably want to avoid that problem just as much as we do. And to a point that Sierra made earlier, wouldn't put it past them. So the last thing we'll touch on here is just Switch 2's battery life, which has gotten a bit of controversy this week, which is that the Switch 2's battery life is going to be worse than the original base model of the Nintendo Switch. So obviously we've had two revisions of the Nintendo Switch's battery. There was the original revision that improved it. I think it was like
an hour and a half.
It went from
overall.
It went from 2.5 to 6.5 hours to 4.5 to 9 hours. So it was a pretty significant increase. And then the OLED model had a similar battery life. So the new console is allegedly going to be more on par with the original, but is like maybe even a little bit worse. It's approximately 2 to 6.5 hours. So yeah,
Oof.
Not great.
Not great. Yo, listen, the portable power bank's going to get the Lord's work this, upcoming year. I got trips planned too. I got like traveling for bachelor parties. I need that battery life to last.
Buy yourself an Anchor charger, everybody. That's what you need as a handheld gamer on the road. Yeah, this is another one of those though, where it's like, this sucks, but also I'm not surprised by this information. It's like the console has a way, way higher quality screen and is
larger screen.
And is running games at higher frame rates and higher resolution. It makes sense that it would have worse battery life.
How does that compare to the Steam Deck? Switch 2 battery life.
The Steam Deck's an interesting one because there's so much you can do for optimization. It's like almost hard to say like how long, because it's like if I'm playing a game like Vampire Survivors or Balatro or something like that, my Steam Deck could stay charged for days, right? Because you can have a lot of control over like the power output in a way that you just won't with a Switch. So it's I'm not super comparable, but I would say that the OLED Steam Deck has a better battery life than this.
Okay.
Broadly. So, final thoughts here. Based on all of these factors, right? Price, tariffs maybe driving it up even farther, some of these minor controversies like around the pack-in titles of the Switch 2 games, battery life, Joy-Con Drift 2, are all of these things enough to dampen your excitement about the console, right? Like if you are able to get it at launch at the initially stated price, right? Without having to worry about tariffs and everything like that. Do you think that these controversies are enough to create a 3DS DS situation where this is the less popular, more expensive follow-up to the most successful thing they had done up until that point? Or are we looking at, a tough couple months at the start of a new generation? And in the same way that people complained about a $7 price point on PlayStation 5 games, and now nobody talks about that anymore.
I feel like that if they come out with an announcement, let's say everything works out fine, because people are worried about paying more than $450. They were worried about $450, let alone $500 plus, right? So I think there are a lot of people like myself who were cool with the $450 or the $500 with the bundle, but will not buy it with the tariffs. So it's like looming disappointment, depending on how much the price is raised. But on the flip side of that, if they then announce that they're going to maintain the $450 price point, like say they work out a deal, I would be so excited. My hype would be higher than ever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that.
No, yeah.
So it's like I feel like it really depends on how these tariffs things are going to shake out. I think the Switch 2 will be a massive success, but if these tariffs stay and they have to raise the price, it's going to put a huge damper for a lot of people, and it's going to severely hurt their numbers. And listen, you don't want to make Miyamoto mad. He made Mario. like leave my boy alone.
What about you, Sierra?
I think that due to the conditions surrounding this launch, I don't think they're gonna have this explosive year that they're hoping for. I think that, and for me, like I was so excited on Wednesday, and I was still even writing that high from that Gale of Darkness reveal. I was still riding that high like all day Wednesday. But when I learned about the pricing, that didn't dampen it. But now with the tariffs, like if that truly does affect the pricing, like then like yeah, I'm gonna be out of like picking up at a launch. And I don't even like I said, like if I can't get that bundle, I'm just gonna wait, or I'm just going to try to just get the bundle. I don't know, like I'm in a bubble. I talk to y'all about gaming. I have my Nintendo circle on social media, but like when I talk to people outside of that, they're like, "Nah, I'm waiting. Like I'm good. Like I don't need this. I have my Switch. Like I don't need anything that they showed." And like I'm wondering if that's actually like a common sentiment amongst like a lot of consumers, especially people who are like not Nintendo gamers, like not Nintendo centric. Like they have other like consoles or platforms that fill their time. So I am now feeling pretty negative about it. And not just because a bunch of Steam Deck bros were in my mentions over the weekend. Like I'm feeling like unbiased, like kind of negative about it. So I'm mostly playing the wait and see, but like if nothing changes, like yay.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I feel pretty similarly. Like I think coming off of the direct, obviously I wasn't like stoked to hear about the game pricing situation, and was honestly more bothered by how they handled it than the actual information itself. But yeah, like, I mean, I came away from that, and then the next 2 days on the Treehouse Direct being like, I'm excited. I'm excited to be entering a new generation of Nintendo stuff. I'm excited to have, like, new software to look forward to, new IP maybe, like, you know, all of the trappings of shiny new toy syndrome when you get a new console. Like, I love that process, and I was very excited about it. And now it just feels like kind of a reminder of how rough everything is right now. And like, I was very much looking forward to this being, you know, the thing that I was looking forward to that was not affected by the, you know, harsh realities of the world right now, you know, and that like, hey, at least I'll have this fun distraction right now, right? And that even as things are going on, right, that are distressing, that like, you know, here on the show and here in the community, that we will have this like fun experience that we all get to be a part of and be excited for. And seeing, you know, kind of the blows keep coming and adding all these asterisks to those positive vibes, yeah, it's been a bummer. You know, and I'm not, like you said, right? I'm not like disappointed because of the product even, right? And like, I had wrapped my head around the, like, some games will be $10 more, whatever, right? Like, it is what it is, right? Like, I can pick and choose. I can live with that, whatever. But yeah, this does feel like a bridge too far, and something that I could see a lot of people, kind of just being like, you know what? Like, I got other stuff I can do, right? I have other options. And, you know, I don't know. I think sometimes it's hard because we live in such an echo chamber, but this is like really cut and dry, right? Like, to your point, Ken, like, people don't have money to burn right now. And I think that people are going to have to be choosier about how they spend their money. And like, yeah, like maybe in our echo chamber, there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. I think the other side of that, though, is the like, there are so many families who have children who need to entertain them. And in the same breath that what you're saying, kind of like, people have less money to spend on basic necessities, that's true, but you do still need to provide stimulation and entertainment and things for your children. And if this is one of those things, there are so many normies that go out and buy Nintendo products that don't listen to podcasts and don't play PC games and are not familiar with emulation and are not in our weird little bubble, that they might still go out and buy this product because everything else is so aggressively expensive that this still is somehow a good value proposition. But man, like, that is such a giant if and such a big asterisk next to, you know, up until this week, something I would have pretty cleanly argued was going to be the most successful console launch of all time. And now you have to wonder.
I know.
It could have all been avoided, but nah, some of y'all don't want a woman president. Nah. I won't go down that path.
So, I hope we have better news for you next week, folks. It's an exciting conversation in terms of just having something exciting to talk about, but boy, this was not the conversation I hoped we would be having a week after the console's reveal. So hopefully we get some good news in these next 2 months. Hopefully we see some movement that will raise our spirits again, and you know, at least for us on this side of the pond, right? Because I see all of our European listeners and all our European friends getting their pre-orders in. They're all excited. I'm so happy for y'all. And I'm also really jealous. I'm really jealous. So, hopefully our time comes soon, friends. Folks, thank you for joining us here on another episode of Nintendo Noise. If you want to write in with your thoughts on today's show, guess what? Flipscreen.games is the website. Head over there. Listen to our sister shows, the Steam Deck podcast and the Flipscreen Games podcast. Go support us on Patreon. Speaking of which, a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of April. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Project Julian, Steve Stompy, Susan Still Likes Cats and Also Boobies, That One Kid Nick, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Thank you so much for your support of everything we do here. Remember, if you want to let us know what you thought about this week's show, let us know in the comments down below. You can, if you're over on YouTube, give the video a like, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're an audio listener, please go and leave a 5-star review wherever you get the podcast. It really helps the show get circulated. However you choose to get involved, flipscreen.games again is the website where you'll find links to everywhere we are and all the ways you can get involved. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we got some good news next week, folks. I love you, and we'll see you next week.